Election. Fulton County election workers are seen counting ballots late on election night after GOP poll observers and reporters had supposedly left. There were also ballot boxes hidden under a table. Members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus are demanding a full review of the presidential election. They question what the Department of Justice is doing to investigate. A retired lieutenant general says acts of treason were perpetrated during this year's election. He is calling on the president to ensure justice. The Justice Department files a lawsuit against Facebook. It says the company discriminated against American workers. And the nation's top intelligence official sends us a warning. He says the Chinese regime intends to dominate the United States, and future generations will judge us by how we respond to this threat. A viral video appears to show Georgia election workers pulling boxes of ballots from underneath tables on election night. President Trump and his lawyers say it's evidence of cheating.
So it's going to be
the Trump campaign's legal team presented the video during a state legislature hearing. They said it is a surveillance footage from the vote counting center in Fulton County, Georgia, which was provided by State Farm Arena. Jackie Pick, a lawyer who is volunteering with the campaign's legal case, described what was happening.
So we're at about 10 o'clock. And what you'll notice is that the workers are present, working, and you have, back in that corner I pointed out to you, the press and the Republican observers. So according to the witnesses, the Republican observers, there is a lady who has blonde braids who comes out to announce we're going to stop counting. Everyone go home. And in fact, we see that. What happens is everyone clears out, including the Republican observers and the press, but 4 people stay behind and continue counting and tabulating well into the night.
The video, taken at 10:37 p.m., suddenly shows the room almost empty with just 4 people remaining, which Pick says is in line with the affidavits from witnesses. The 4 allegedly continue counting ballots from around 10:30 p.m. until 1 in the morning, unobserved and unsupervised. Pick said that around 11 p.m., the footage appears to show workers pull boxes of ballots out from under a tablecloth. State officials have denied there is anything untoward going on. No one has yet explained who placed the containers under the table or why that was done. The chief investigator for the Georgia Secretary of State disputes that poll observers were told to leave. Georgia GOP Chair David Schaefer pointed out the video shows that observers were not there, and therefore ballots were counted unlawfully and in secret.
Following the release of the video footage, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is calling on Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to order a signature audit of votes. He made the comments on Fox News' The Ingraham Angle. Kemp said state law gives the Secretary of State that power, and he thinks it should be done. Republican lawmakers are calling for the Department of Justice to publicly investigate election fraud. They say half of Americans have lost trust in this year's election.
Attorney General William Barr is coming under criticism from members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus. Standing outside the Capitol, they said Barr needs to quickly explain what he's doing to investigate the election. Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona said that claims of election fraud have been piling up since November 3rd. Representative Warren Davison of Ohio called on Barr to do his duty.
Nearly half of the country feels that their vote may be diluted or stolen because of fraud in an election. That cannot stand, and our Department of Justice, if it truly represents justice, must act, and they must act publicly, and they must act swiftly.
Representative Ted Yoho of Florida made reference to the Chinese Communist regime's influence on other countries, questioning whether America wants that kind of government. He said they would accept the results as long as they are shown to be legitimate. Representative Randy Weber of Texas said the stakes could not be higher in ensuring election integrity.
We must collect all those facts, all the evidence, and leave no stone unturned. Folks, this is not a hill to die on. This is the hill to die on.
Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana said claims of fraud should definitely be investigated. He noted court challenges has caused uproar in the media among many Democrats and with some Republicans. He told Fox News President Trump, quote, has every right to go to court and contest the results of the election, and you have every right to disagree, but that doesn't degrade democracy, it elevates it.
President Trump responded to Attorney General William Barr's comment on the election yesterday. Barr said he hasn't seen any evidence of widespread election fraud. The Department of Justice later clarified that they're not done with their investigation. In his response, the president said he'll hold off on deciding if he still has confidence in Barr.
After awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to former football coach Lou Holtz, President Trump commented on U.S. Attorney General William Barr's assessment of this year's election status. Barr told the Associated Press that the DOJ has not seen voter fraud on a scale that would have changed the outcome of the election.
Well, he hasn't done anything, so he hasn't looked. When he looks, he'll see the kind of evidence that right now you're seeing in the Georgia Senate. You know, they're going through hearings right now in Georgia, and they're finding tremendous volumes. So they haven't looked very hard, which is a disappointment, to be honest with you, because it's massive fraud. Whether you go to Wisconsin, where we just filed a case, or Michigan, or if you look at what's happening in Georgia, as an example, or Pennsylvania, if you look at Nevada, which is moving along very rapidly, or Arizona, you saw those numbers come out yesterday. We found massive fraud, and in other states also. This is probably the most fraudulent election that anyone's ever seen.
When asked whether or not he still has confidence in Barr, Trump said to save that question for a later date.
Ask me that in a number of weeks from now. They should be looking at all of this fraud. This is not civil. He thought it was civil. This is not civil. This is criminal stuff. This is very bad criminal stuff. So I just say this. We went through an election. At 10 o'clock, everybody said that was an easy victory for Trump. All of a sudden, the votes started disappearing, miraculously disappearing. We found much of it, but we found far more votes than we need in almost all of these states. And I think I can say in all of these states, far more votes than we need to win every one of them. And I want to just thank my team, because my team is doing an unbelievable job. And more importantly, I want to thank the 74 million plus people that voted, which, Lou, is the largest amount of people that a sitting president has ever had, 74 million plus. And because the level of loyalty, I've never seen anything like it. All over the country, they know it was a fixed election. It was a rigged election. They know it, and I appreciate their support. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
President Trump's re-election campaign and the Republican National Committee announced they have raised over $200 million since Election Day. Campaign manager Bill Stepien said the amount shows that the president remains the leader and source of energy for the Republican Party, and that his supporters are dedicated to fighting for the rightful legal outcome of the 2020 general election. RNC Chairwoman Ramona McDaniel thanked supporters for the donations. She said the teams will continue to fight for election integrity. And a former lieutenant general of the U.S. Air Force has a message for the American people. He says there is not just election fraud taking place, but acts of treason. He is calling on the president to declare a national emergency and arrest the perpetrators. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
Is he part of the deep state?
Former Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney has come out on the record alleging that treason against the nation is taking place surrounding the presidential election. He says the attempt to steal the election from President Trump is the largest cyber warfare activity in the world. McInerney says there are two groups involved, both the foreign states of China, Russia, and Iran, as well as U.S. citizens.
This is 6 to 10 states bonding together to manipulate their data to take control of the U.S. government and the chief executive officer, the commander-in-chief. So this is not anything to be taken lightly. It's not dirty politics or tricks. It is treason by the very nature against the United States government and the people of America.
A cybersecurity expert signed an affidavit saying TV news stations reported the counting stopped in 5 swing states the morning after the election. He calls this highly unusual and says it may indicate prior coordination, but says they did not stop counting and did so behind closed doors, demonstrating collusion to get the results they wanted in secret. General McInerney outlines a 5-fold plan for tackling what he calls a national emergency.
Initiate the Insurrection Act, declare martial law, suspend habeas corpus, and set up military tribunals. Those are the things that must be done in this emergency. It is a national emergency of whether we're going to continue forward as a democratic republic or go into a totalitarian society.
General McInerney's plan starts with the president declaring a national emergency as per Trump's 2018 executive order on foreign interference with the election. Then he suggests implementing the Insurrection Act to quell potential riots by Antifa and BLM, who he says will want to create chaos if Trump wins. Then declare martial law, suspend habeas corpus, and set up military tribunals to arrest and try those who participated in the steal, people he's identified but can't disclose. He says the problem must be solved now or never.
And if we don't solve it now, it'll never be solved because we will move into a tyrannical situation that will eventually be, whether you can call it social democrats or communists, it's going to be both the same. It's just a different name.
What's more, General McInerney said the vote-switching applications Hammer and Scorecard were in use in this election, as well as in 2016. He says Dominion Voting Systems' central server farm was moved to Frankfurt, Germany, where rogue elements of the CIA had it. U.S. Special Forces then seized it, and he says the White House has confirmed the U.S. has possession of them. He says he does not know whether or not there were casualties during the seizure. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin dismissed an election-related lawsuit filed by President Trump and his re-election campaign. The lawsuit sought to decertify the state's election results. It was filed on December 1st.
Wisconsin's highest court dismissed on Thursday an election-related lawsuit filed by the president's re-election campaign. The lawsuit was filed on December 1st to challenge the results of the 2020 general election in Wisconsin. In a 4-3 ruling, the court ordered the Trump campaign to file an appeal to the circuit court. The lawsuit alleged that officials in Wisconsin violated the law by counting at least 170,000 illegal ballots. The suit sought to decertify Wisconsin's election results, which were certified this Monday. Some of the judges acknowledged that there are valid concerns about how the election was conducted, but said that such questions needed to be addressed by lower courts. The Trump campaign also filed a separate new lawsuit in Wisconsin on Wednesday. It is a federal lawsuit filed with a district court in the state, and lawyer Sidney Powell filed another lawsuit in Wisconsin on Tuesday.
A Nevada judge heard evidence of voter fraud, and among the claims raised, a lawyer on the Trump campaign said votes disappeared and reappeared in the dead of the night.
Trump campaign lawyer JESSY presented evidence of voter fraud to Judge James T. Russell. The hearing started with the court barring a witness declaration from being used. The court claimed that it was submitted too late and only evidence submitted before November 25th could be used. The plaintiffs and defendants had until 5 p.m. on Wednesday to submit their evidence. Binnell said that there was no cybersecurity in the voting machines, adding that evidence from an anonymous witness dubbed Doe 1 shows that votes were changed in the dead of the night.
In the middle of the night, what they would do is they would log these disks in and out. Good practice. And the disks had a specific serial number on them. And numerous times, a disk would be logged out with one vote total on it and logged back in the next morning during the early vote period with a different number on it. Sometimes more, sometimes less. What that means is that literally in the dead of night, votes were appearing and votes were disappearing on these machines.
He also claimed that Nevada election officials avoided getting served a subpoena from Republicans but met with Democrats.
When the court gave us the opportunity to start discovery, we promptly got out a subpoena for the Registrar of Voters in Clark County, Joe Gloria. They closed and locked their offices so that we couldn't serve it. We tried to serve Mr. Gloria personally in his house. He spent several days avoiding service, knowing where he was, but we couldn't get actual service on him. While he was doing that, the deposition testimony will show, he was meeting with the defendants. He was working with them and putting together their case where he was the government official that's supposed to be impartial, supposed to be ensuring the integrity of elections, was stonewalling the contestants being able to serve subpoenas.
A recent audit of nearly 1,500 mail-in ballots in Nevada suggested that 2% of ballots were cast on behalf of voters who never received a ballot in the mail, while 1% of them were cast on behalf of voters who said they did not vote at all. Given the evidence, Binnell asked the court to grant the contest and to strike the Biden voters from representing Nevada in the Electoral College. He said, "What we can't do is turn a blind eye to voter fraud. If we're going to keep being the beacon of representative democracy in the world, when it goes bad, and here it went bad, we can't just turn a blind eye to it. That's not what we do in America. We make it right." Christina Kim, NTD News.
Republican senators released hundreds of files related to the Trump-Russia investigation. That was after he laid out how biases in federal agencies fueled an operation that, in the end, found no collusion. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that hearing.
Senator Ron Johnson, who's explored the FBI's corrupt investigation into President Trump's campaign staff, raised the executive branch's history of bias during a Thursday committee hearing. For example, in a report on leaks, Johnson says that over 120 leaks were made in Trump's first 4 months in office.
62 of them would have been defined as harming national security, according to the Obama administration's definition of that. And that 62 compares with, I think, 8 or 9 during both the Bush and the Obama administrations. It's an explosion of leaks. And by the way,
he went on to say that these leaks fueled the faulty narrative about Crossfire Hurricane, an investigation in which the FBI spied on staff from the Trump campaign. Johnson called the leaks that have gone unpunished an unjust abuse of power, and the abuse, he says, is just part of the problem. Resistance is another.
This is an email that the GSA produced to us, and you can see we can read the whole thing except for the mobile phone number of the sender of the email. This is the exact same email produced to us by the FBI. As you can see, almost everything is redacted. There's no reason for things to be redacted. There's nothing involving or harming national security here.
Meanwhile, the Justice Department found that sensitive information has improperly poured out from within the Trump administration, and the media has soaked it up. Cheryl Atkinson, an investigative journalist who used to work for CBS, testified before the Senate committee. She says many media outlets started to throw out their values after Trump was elected.
One of the things I've criticized is that at the beginning of the Trump administration, many news organizations announced that they were suspending their normal ethics and standards that dictate how their news organization typically deals with things such as use of anonymous sources, that they were suspending these because they said they needed to suspend their standards to cover a uniquely dangerous president.
After the hearing, Senator Johnson and Grassley released hundreds of FBI, DOJ, and State Department files related to that investigation, which ultimately found no collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
President Trump signed an executive order on AI. It sets guidance for how artificial intelligence should be used in government decision-making. It sets 9 principles for the design and development of AI in government. These include being lawful and respectful to our nation's values, being responsible and traceable, transparent, and accountable, among others. The goal is to foster public trust and confidence in AI, while making sure that Americans' privacy, civil rights, and liberties are protected. The Trump administration has made AI a priority, in part by urging agencies to use it to eliminate outdated regulations. The top U.S. tech officer says the order will modernize the government and show America's leadership in artificial intelligence. Vice President Mike Pence says the U.S. is days away from getting virus vaccines. He made the announcement alongside the FedEx chairman, the CDC director, and the Health and Human Services secretary, alongside with Tennessee's governor.
We expect to be shipping COVID-19 vaccines within 24 hours of approval, and we expect vaccines to begin to be administered to Americans in that first group within 24 hours of that. It's an amazing thing.
HHS Secretary Azar said 6.4 million Pfizer vaccine doses and 12.5 million Moderna vaccine doses will be available the first week of distribution, and explained doses for 20 million people would be available by the end of December. CDC head Dr. Redfield said despite the record progress, he's concerned about those who are skeptical over the safety of getting vaccinated. He also noted the effectiveness of wearing masks and social distancing. And the Department of Justice is going after Facebook. Its new lawsuit claims the company chose visa holders over American workers.
The Justice Department has filed a lawsuit against Facebook, alleging it discriminated against U.S. workers in favor of temporary visa holders. The DOJ claims that for most of 2018 and 2019, Facebook refused to hire qualified U.S. workers for over 2,600 positions. Instead, the company reserved the jobs for foreigners with temporary visas. The complaint said Facebook did this by failing to advertise those vacancies on its careers website, requiring applicants to apply by physical mail only, and refusing to consider any U.S. workers who applied for those positions. A DOJ official said, "Our message to workers is clear. If companies deny employment opportunities by illegally preferring temporary visa holders, the Department of Justice will hold them accountable." The DOJ says this also hurts temporary visa holders. They often have limited job mobility, meaning they're more likely to stay with a company until their status changes. And that could take decades. The lawsuit seeks civil penalties and back pay for domestic workers who were allegedly denied employment. The goal is to make sure Facebook doesn't discriminate against U.S. workers in the future.
The nation's top intelligence official says the Chinese regime is the greatest threat to the United States and the free world. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe wrote a commentary in the Wall Street Journal. He said he has access to more intelligence than any member of the U.S. government other than the president. He says this gives him a unique vantage point, and the intelligence is clear. Beijing wants to dominate the United States and the rest of the world. He says we now face a choice between two incompatible ideologies, and we will be judged by how we respond to China's effort to replace America as the dominant superpower. Coming up, a Supreme Court ruling puts an end to encroaching restrictions on California houses of worship. The California governor says his restrictions on religious service attendance were necessary. And California Governor Gavin Newsom announced plans for new lockdown measures. Residents in Los Angeles criticized the governor after he was recently spotted violating his own orders. Find out more when we return.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Two firefighters were injured while battling a wildfire in a Southern California canyon. The blaze has torn through more than thousands of acres of land and forced thousands from their homes. Wildfires ripped through canyons across Southern California this week, forcing some 25,000 residents to evacuate. The main blaze in Orange County's Silverado Canyon started at a family home on Wednesday night. Driven by high winds and dry vegetation, it has already burned through some 7,000 acres of land and, as of Thursday, was 0% contained. Hundreds of firefighters have been battling the flames, aided by aircraft dropping water. 2 of the firefighters were injured. They're at a local hospital getting further treatment. Los Angeles residents on Thursday criticized California Governor Gavin Newsom's latest plan. He intends to impose pandemic stay-at-home orders across the state when hospital intensive care units near maximum capacity.
The latest constraints were unveiled as virus infections and hospitalizations rise in the state. Residents expressed confusion and frustration at the new orders on Los Angeles' Sunset Boulevard. LA resident Elizabeth Barclay said people had lost confidence in Governor Newsom after he was recently photographed at a restaurant with members of other households in violation of his own guidelines.
Like, it felt a little weird to have, you know, outdoor dining and these stay-at-home orders being enforced, but then Gavin Newsom was dining at the French Laundry inside.
The state documented a record on Wednesday alone, over 18,500 new cases.
Yeah, like, people are losing their jobs, and losing jobs means losing money. Losing money means maybe losing your home. You know, you have to feed your kids, whatever. So it's a bigger picture, I think, than just sick people.
The new restrictions will represent the most stringent social distancing rules anywhere in the United States. Newsom imposed the country's first statewide lockdown in March.
The Supreme Court issued a decision siding with California churches that are seeking relief from the state's restrictions. The decision halts limits on attendance at houses of worship that were impacting freedom of religion. The High Court's order was unsigned and not accompanied by dissenting opinions. This suggests the justices' vote on it was unanimous. California Governor Gavin Newsom told the court that the policy on church attendance was justified on public health grounds. It's the second decision in 2 weeks slapping down overreaches by Democratic governors in populous states. Last week, the Supreme Court blocked New York Governor Andrew Cuomo from encroaching similar pandemic-related restrictions on houses of worship. Earlier this week, officials in San Jose, California urged its county to change the sanctuary city policy after an undocumented suspect with a history of criminal activity went on a stabbing spree last week. NTD's Eileen Ang has more on the story.
San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo and Police Chief Eddie Garcia are urging Santa Clara County to change its sanctuary city policy after they heard that an undocumented suspect responsible for a church stabbing is a repeat felon who has been deported 3 times. 32-year-old Fernando de Jesus Lopez Garcia stabbed 5 people on November 22nd at around 8 p.m. at the Grace Baptist Church in San Jose.
The first unit arrived on scene within 2 minutes of the first 911 call. Callers reported that a male was actively stabbing people in the church. Callers reported the suspect was still in the church, armed with a knife. Another told the dispatcher that a man was going crazy, stabbing people, and there was blood everywhere.
A man died at the scene. A woman died at a local hospital. 3 are in serious but stable condition. The church is a homeless shelter, providing meals and shelter services. The suspect is homeless and took shelter at the church before. He was charged with 2 murder counts, 3 counts of attempted murder, battery on a spouse or cohabitant, and violating a protective order. He was arrested twice last year and released on unknown dates, but the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, was never notified. In response to the tragedy, ICE stated that if the immigration detainers were honored and that ICE was notified, they would have taken him away.
Our hearts go out to the loved ones of the 2 victims who perished in this attack. And we pray for the rapid and full recovery of the 3 surviving victims.
The mayor said the tragedy could have been avoided, stating multiple system failures, such as getting people off the street and into housing, finding a more balanced approach to the criminal justice system, and notifying ICE when a violent, undocumented immigrant is released into the community, something he has been advocating for the last 5 years.
In those very rare circumstances where an undocumented offender has a record of violent or serious prior convictions, the county should be acting in accordance with the state's Values Act and notifying ICE that a person will be released out into the community unless ICE responds. In this case, I'm told that the county received an ICE detainer request but did not notify ICE of the defendant's release.
The California Values Act, also known as SB 54, was passed in 2017 to prevent state and local resources from helping the federal government to carry out mass deportations. But there are exceptions if the person is convicted of a serious, violent, or state prison felony. He is urging the county to follow the law. Motivation for the stabbing is uncertain, but witnesses said the suspect did seem to be under the influence of drugs, but the police have not confirmed it at this point. Reporting by Eileen Eng, NTD News, Santa Clara, California.
Coming up, 4 companies are added to a blacklist of Chinese military-linked firms. 2 of the companies include a top chip maker and an oil giant. This brings the list total to 35.
Wow, that did that really flawlessly. It has that natural skin-like finish, which I love so much. They really hit it spot on with this quiz. It matches my skin so perfectly. I feel so flawless. I haven't felt like my skin
The Trump administration added China's top chip maker and an oil giant to the U.S. defense blacklist. A total of 4 additional companies were designated as owned or controlled by the Chinese military. The companies include SMIC, CNOOC, China Construction Technology, and China International Engineering Consulting Corp. The move takes the total number of blacklisted companies to 35. A recent executive order by President Trump will prevent U.S. investors from buying the blacklisted firm's securities starting late next year. Shares of oil giant CNOOC had fallen nearly 14% after the news and tumbled just under 4% by Friday's market close. Chipmaker SMIC relies heavily on equipment from U.S. suppliers and was already in Washington's crosshairs. Legislatures from a global cross-party alliance on China urged people to buy Australian wine on Tuesday. They posted a video in response to trade sanctions on wine imported from Australia.
After a hard day's work, nothing beats a glass of New Zealand Pinot.
But next month, we're drinking something a little bit different because our friends need our help.
US House Rep Ted Yoho was among a worldwide group of politicians asking people to raise a glass of Australian wine to stand against China.
Ah, that's a fine Australian wine.
The group is a global alliance of legislators from 19 countries across party lines. It follows months of deteriorating relations between Australia and China after Australia called for an international inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus. Since then, China has suspended imports on not just wine from Australia, but also coal, barley, even lobster. Just last week, China said it will slap down temporary tariffs of up to 200% on wine imported from Australia. They say they found evidence of dumping, that Australia lowers the price of its wine to get into the Chinese market. Australia calls the move unjustified, and wine sellers have told Reuters the opposite is true, that their margins are higher in China. The Interparliamentary Alliance on China, who made the video, includes lawmakers from the European Parliament to Uganda and Japan, and argues Beijing's rising influence is a threat to democratic values.
Up next, Boeing's 737 MAX returned for its first test flight since its 20-month safety ban on Wednesday. The aircraft had been grounded after 2 crashes in March 2019. And our luxury shops on Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles are adapting to the pandemic. Travel restrictions and state lockdown measures have kept shoppers at home. More on that after the break.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9.
In the next 45 seconds, I want to share with you how you can...
It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Boeing's 737 MAX took to the skies for the first time in 20 months on Wednesday. Following the extended safety ban, carriers now seek to demonstrate to passengers that the redesigned jet is safe.
Wednesday's American Airlines 737 MAX flight was a 45-minute hop from Dallas to Tulsa. Members of the media were given a tour of a technical operations hangar where American was working on its 737 MAX fleet. It comes weeks before the first commercial passenger flight on December 29th. The tour is part of a public relations effort to alleviate concerns about the aircraft's return to service.
Well, I mean, the confidence starts here, right here in the flight deck. I mean, the pilots have to feel confident, and I feel very sure that they will. And that confidence will translate back to the passengers that are flying.
Boeing's best-selling jet was grounded in March 2019. That's after 2 crashes in 5 months killed nearly 350 people combined. The accidents marked the industry's worst safety crisis in decades and undermined U.S. aviation regulatory leadership. Last month, the Federal Aviation Administration cleared the jet following design changes and new training.
Well, pilots go through the training, which is about an hour and 40 to 50 minutes of computer-based training, and then a 1-hour brief prior to going into a 2-hour simulator. They will have seen a tremendous amount of the systems knowledge that we didn't have before, and actually the hands-on flying part of it also.
One part of the design change included a software upgrade to deal with a stall prevention system called MCAS. In both crashes, the system repeatedly shoved the jet's nose down as pilots struggled to regain control. A smooth return to service for the MAX is seen as critical for Boeing's reputation and finances.
New York City is one of the world's most beautiful places when it comes to Christmas decorations, but stores are not displaying as much as usual this year.
Despite the cold December weather in the city, people usually come here to see what new decorations each location has to offer. One of the best places to do that is Fifth Avenue. We used footage we took in recent years to show you how it usually looks on the famous shopping street. The difference compared to this year is striking.
So as we can see, the decoration in these stores in recent years has been far more spectacular than they are this year. We asked New Yorkers what they think about this change.
I see a difference here because these would be much more ornate, and there's like a painted backdrop and a proscenium. There's really nothing going on there.
But not only the decorations themselves have been scaled down this year. Usually, the shops on Fifth Avenue hold a big event when they unveil their decorations for the year.
Like you couldn't go in the store at all, and there was just people outside. And so I haven't been like really doing much shopping myself, but they are empty, I know that.
Several well-known brands in the area are struggling to keep their stores running. The Italian fashion company Valentino Spa has sued the landlord of its Fifth Avenue store. They argue they can't keep their store open due to government restrictions and were trying to void their lease. Reporting by Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
A surge in CCP virus cases in Los Angeles has taken its toll on businesses in the run-up to the holidays, with people staying at home or not having the money to shop.
Rodeo Drive is beginning to look a little like Christmas, but this world-famous shopping street has been scaled back. The pandemic has grounded flights for many international customers. New stay-at-home measures ordered by the state of California are keeping local customers away too. Italian fashion label Stefano Ricci is an in-the-know brand with China's ultra-wealthy. It relies more on word-of-mouth advertising instead of social media or publicity.
And the luxury, very high price, items like suits or jackets is not selling that well because we're not going anywhere. We cannot go anywhere,
But it seems nothing will stop dedicated shoppers who are looking for luxury. Online retail sales have skyrocketed in 2020, and time is on the side of shops like Stefano Ricci. Kathy Gahari, vice president of the Rodeo Drive Committee, says luxury will find a way. She acknowledges sales are generally down during the pandemic, but not for everyone.
But the existing luxury client who is continuous in their purchases, their shopping desires hasn't really changed. Again, it's what they buy, not if they buy.
The frenetic holiday frenzy to get to the shops in time may be gone, but the spirit of Christmas cheer continues in a quietly stylish way.
Coming up, Warner Brothers announces an industry-upending move for its 2021 calendar of movie releases. It's designed to increase revenue during virus lockdown measures. And fans finally get a chance to celebrate the Los Angeles Dodgers World Series win. Instead of a parade, fans can celebrate with a drive-through display near the stadium. More on that after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
In the new year, you won't have to go to a movie theater to catch the debut of the latest Warner Brothers movies. You won't even have to leave your couch. The company says it will make all of its 2021 films available in theaters and on the HBO Max streaming service starting on the same day.
Next year, you won't need to get off your couch to catch Warner Brothers' biggest 2021 box office titles. Warner Brothers Studio on Thursday announced it would make all of its 2021 films available in theaters and on the HBO Max streaming service on the same day, an unprecedented shift in movie viewing in response to the health crisis that has upended the movie industry and shuttered movie theaters around the world. Big titles, which are expected to include Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, a new version of Dune, and a Matrix sequel, will be available on HBO Max for 1 month starting on the same day they debut in cinemas. Studios have been pushing to make their movies available in living rooms sooner than the typical timeline of roughly 90 days after they debut in cinemas, an idea theater owners have been fighting. Warner Brothers executives said the strategy would be in place for 1 year, beginning on Christmas with the dual release of Wonder Woman 1984, simultaneously in U.S. theaters and on HBO Max.
When the LA Dodgers won the World Series title in October, the pandemic meant there was no official street parade. Now, 6 weeks later, fans have the chance to celebrate the team's victory and the holiday season in one place, with a drive-through interactive display at Dodger Stadium.
A drive-through holiday light show in Los Angeles is attracting all types of people, especially hardcore Dodgers fans. That's because the spectacle, held in the parking lot of Dodger Stadium, replaces a victory parade that should have marked the Dodgers' first World Series win since 1988. But not everything that should happen is happening these days. So now, weeks after the Dodgers' World Series win, socially distant fans are coming out to celebrate.
I've been a ticket holder for 30 plus years and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Real excited. This is kind of good because we really can't do anything else. So this is a good alternative to get out of the house and take part in the Christmas spirit.
There's not much to do while under the city's current stay-at-home order, but this is one of them. A 30-minute drive past LED video displays of Dodgers players, giant bobbleheads including the legendary former team manager Tommy Lasorda, a cowgirl surrounded by unicorns, and a custom-made championship trophy.
Oh, of course, you gotta be in the holiday spirit, especially with 2020. There's nothing else you can be, is be happy.
Merry Christmas. Go Dodgers baseball.
For Dodgers fans, who are required to stay in their cars and wear face masks if the windows are rolled down, this party is better late than never.
President Trump and the First Lady held the annual National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony on Thursday night. The president celebrated the American spirit in an uplifting speech.
Standing from the balcony of the White House on Thursday night, President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump hosted the annual lighting ceremony for the National Christmas Tree.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, and a very Merry Christmas to all. It's going to be a great year. Tonight, we're honored to continue the nearly 100-year ceremony of lighting the National Christmas Tree.
In a speech addressing the nation, the president thanked the National Park Service and students who designed this year's tree. He then invited the First Lady to light up the Christmas tree.
So the First Lady will do a very special honor also of right now lighting the National Christmas Tree. And please join me from your homes and all over the country, and in fact all over the world, as we light our great tree. We'll start with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
President Trump gave another speech praising selfless and compassionate Americans during this year's pandemic. At the end, he wished everyone a Merry Christmas.
This year, our nation and the world have battled a once-in-a-century pandemic. We have witnessed Christ's spirit of selflessness and compassion throughout our land And we have seen God's mercy and grace and the goodness of our fellow citizens. And Americans across our nation have made profound sacrifices for their neighbors and for people all over the world. Merry Christmas to all, and best wishes for a very, very great and happy New Year.
For the past 98 years, presidents have upheld the tradition of lighting the national Christmas tree in front of the White House. The tradition first started under President Calvin Coolidge.
Vice President Mike Pence will appear at a Defend the Majority rally today in Savannah, Georgia, to support Republican Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. The rally is scheduled to start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and NTD and the Epoch Times will cover the whole rally live. And that's all for now. Catch us again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Jasmina Davis.